Today, we're diving into one of Shakespeare's most famous plays, The Tempest. But we're not going to treat it like some dusty old book. Nope. We're looking at it as a timeless parable, a story about a really tough choice that's just as real for us today as it was 400 years ago. So, let me start by asking you something. Imagine someone you trusted completely, betrayed you, took everything from you. And now, years later, you suddenly have the power to get perfect revenge with zero consequences. What do you do? Seriously, what would you choose? That exact dilemma is the beating heart of this story. All right, let's meet our main character, the sorcerer Prospero. At this point, he's a man who has been pushed way past his breaking point. His entire life is now driven by one thing, and one thing only: getting back at the people who stole his life from him. So let's just unpack this for a second. This wasn't some quick little thing. We're talking about a 12-year-long quest. First, Prospero, who's the actual Duke of Milan, gets stabbed in the back by his own brother. Then he and his little daughter Miranda are just cast out to sea and left to die. But they don't. They wash up on this deserted island. And for 12 years, he does nothing but study his magic, getting more and more powerful. And then finally, his chance arrives. He conjures this massive storm and bam, shipwrecks his enemies right on his front doorstep. The stage is set. Prospero's plan, at least at first, is pretty straightforward. He's going to use his spirit servant, a powerful being named Ariel, to totally mess with the heads of the people shipwrecked on his island. The goal? Torment them, manipulate them, and ultimately get his title as Duke back. But here's where it gets really interesting. As Prospero's plan gets going, the island itself kind of becomes this little laboratory for human nature. And it turns out Prospero isn't the only one obsessed with power. And check this out. It's like a mirror. The hunger for power is everywhere on this island. You've got the noble plot, right, where Prospero's brother, Antonio, tries to convince the king's brother to murder the king and steal his crown. And at the exact same time, you've got the lowly plot, where the native islander, Caliban, teams up with a couple of drunk servants to try and kill Prospero so they can rule the island. It just goes to show you that hunger for power, for control, it's not just for the rich and famous, it's in all of us. And here's the real kicker. The big irony. The whole reason Prospero lost his power in the first place? It's because he was so wrapped up in his books, his magical studies, that he totally ignored his actual job as Duke. He cared more about knowledge than about leading his people, and that created a power vacuum that his brother was more than happy to fill. So his obsession with control now is a direct response to his own past failures. So you're probably wondering, how exactly does Prospero pull all this off? How does he orchestrate this whole elaborate scheme? Well, he basically has three main tools in his toolbox. First, and most obvious, is his magic. This is his superpower, and it all comes from his books. Magic lets him control the weather, create these wild illusions, basically bend reality to his will. It's the ultimate tool for creating his own version of order out of all this chaos. But it's not all supernatural stuff. Language itself is a huge source of power here. Think about it. For Caliban, the language Prospero taught him is just a weapon to curse him with. But for other characters, it's how they build alliances, how they manipulate each other, and, in the end, it's how they find a way to heal. How these characters talk to each other tells you everything you need to know about who they really are. And let's be real, none of this would work without servitude. Prospero's power is built on the backs of others. He commands Ariel, this powerful spirit, and he's enslaved Caliban, the island's original inhabitant. Their forced labor is the engine that drives his entire plan, showing us that even on this remote island, the world is still all about hierarchies and power struggles. Okay, so all of this, the magic, the manipulation, the forced service, it all builds and builds to one single critical moment, the climax of the whole story. So picture this. Prospero's plan? It worked. Flawlessly. His enemies are defeated, confused, and totally at his mercy. He has them right where he's wanted them for 12 long years. And right then, at the absolute peak of his power, his spirit servant Ariel says something that makes him stop and think. And here it is, the fork in the road. Does he go for the jugular and get the revenge he's dreamed of for over a decade? Or does he choose another path? He realizes that mercy is a rarer action than vengeance, and that choice, right there, is his moment of true growth. It's the decision that will define him not as a powerful sorcerer, but as a human being. So what happens when he chooses forgiveness? Well,
The result isn't just peace for his enemies, it's freedom for himself.
It's like a chain reaction of healing. First comes remorse. King Alonso truly feels terrible for what he did. That remorse is what opens the door for the next step, Prospero's forgiveness. And once he forgives them, it paves the way for real reconciliation, which is sealed by the marriage of his daughter Miranda to the king's son, Ferdinand. Their families, their kingdoms, they're all united. And that brings us to his final and maybe his most powerful act of all. Prospero realizes that to truly be free, he has to give up the very thing that made him powerful. He vows to break his magic staff and drown his book of spells deep in the ocean. By giving up his godlike abilities, he's choosing to just be human again. He's no longer the all-powerful sorcerer. He's just the Duke of Milan, ready to go back to the real world. And that brings us full circle. Prospero had to let go of his magic, his anger, his need for control, his thirst for revenge, to truly find his freedom. So it leaves us with a pretty deep question to think about. What's the magic in our own lives? What are the things we cling to for power, the grudges, the ambitions that we might need to let go of to find our own sense of peace?